you see our guest, but I'll come back to me first. Here's a thing I should mea culpa real quick. It's rare that I fuck up so much with a guest, but I've messed up a couple times on this one. Let's go back in time. In March, I was interviewing this young man, and I said, hey, congratulations. You won the Polaris Pro Qualifier for an amazing absolute that was supposed to be on April 4th. Well, pandemics happen. And then the interview gods, when I was recording that interview, decided to suck up the whole interview and chop it out. And as a result of that, it was very sad. But I am happy to report that right now, we actually have the young man who had an amazing interview with me a month ago that nobody saw. But now you guys get to see. And we're going to do it right. We're going to do it proper. If you guys have questions, throw them at us. We can actually do them because we are live once again. We've missed you. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to newly crowned black belt, one young Nick Ronan. Nick, how are you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Nick, it's so good to be up and operational and to have people where we can see each other and we can see people who are watching this as we are live right now. Let me ask this, man. What did it feel like to get your black belt?
I mean, it was something I've always thought about since I first started Jiu-jitsu in the 7th grade. I always saw black belts as something really special. So for me to attain that rank, and especially be given it to me by Matt Serra, who's just an absolute legend, it just meant the world to me.
And I gotta say, we scheduled when the first one went down. We were going to reschedule on the night that you actually got your black belt. And I've never gotten a message that was nicer and more polite as to be like, hey, Raf, so sorry, bud. Any way we can do this later? I'm kind of getting my black belt tonight. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, F us, dude. You go do what you need to do. What did that celebration entail?
At the Cheesecake Factory. We went to the Cheesecake Factory with all the boys, Taza, Jason Rao. We all rounded everyone up. Frank Rosendahl went to the Cheesecake Factory, had a bunch of Oreo Dream cheesecakes, and called it a night.
What a wild party from you gentlemen. Oh my goodness. So does there become a celebration drink that you have? Do you just eat food? Like, I understand to grapplers, it's got to be like, hey, listen, I got to still kind of keep in some kind of shape. So what does that process look like?
It was mostly the food.
Okay. It
was mostly the food. We all just had cheesecakes and we kind of went to hell with ourselves. And then I probably had a celebratory toast with my family when I got home.
That's nice. What was your family like? Did they expect it? Did they know? Because you didn't know, right?
No, definitely not.
Okay. What was their reaction? And how did they do it, I guess I should ask?
They were all super fixated on a Yankee game because they love old Yankee games. And as you know, the season isn't even a thing right now. So they were watching an old Yankees classic game. And I was like, guys, I got something to tell you. And they're like, no, wait a minute, we're watching the game. And I was like, no, guys, like this is kind of big. And I was like, come on, please. And then I showed them the belt, and they were like, oh my God. And they finally put the game on pause, and they had a celebration. And we brought out the liquor cabinet.
Good. I'm going to get there in a second. But let me just point out something to people who may or may not be understanding what's going on here. I like the fact that this is how little our sport is in the realm of some people, that we're fighting against ESPN Classic. Like, we can't even tell them, like, yo, this is maybe one of the most important nights of my... Oh, wait till this is out? Okay. Well, can I tell you before the 7th inning stretch? Because I think it's kind of big to me, so it should be big to you. Family, love each other. Let me ask this. What is the drink you go to? Because you say you pull out the liquor cabinet and the family's all toasting. So what is the drink that is celebratory to you, sir?
So ever since I went to Ireland, I went to Ireland with my entire family. It's always been Irish whiskey. Either Jameson, Tullamore Dew, or pretty much those two. That's what we stick with.
Okay.
And that's the drink.
And that's got to be cool. So would you say that the family's, creating this sort of a thing, is that like what is your family like? How many brothers, sisters, mom, dad? What is it?
Yeah, so I have an older brother and a younger brother. So I'm the middle child. Um, and yeah, that's the family dynamic.
Are they old enough to drink as well?
Yeah, everyone's old enough to drink.
Okay. Because I'm not sure. I mean, and again, in some families, I come from a Mexican family where it's not uncommon to be like, "How old are you?" Nah, no one cares. Here you go, mijo. Shoot it, but you need to put this in first. And be like, what is this deal? I don't think I should be drinking this.
I'm at the age now where like everyone just drinks wine at family dinners now. It's
it's a magical moment because I went to a wedding right about the time I think you qualified, and there's something to behold of even at my age now, like when my dad and I are drinking, we sometimes have a moment where we look at each other being like, cheers, old man. Yeah, this is cool. You don't drink a ton, and I drink a little, and we definitely have that. Let me ask this. Doreen McCain asks, is the whiskey with or without a pickle back?
I don't do the pickle back. I usually just do whiskey with a big ice cube, so it doesn't melt too much and get water in it.
Okay. These are important questions, kid.
These are big.
These are big. This is why, this is a very different experience than being like, hey, I got questions to ask you. Now the audience.
I respect the pickleback. That was a big move in college.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. So I want to, when I asked earlier, I want to kind of make sure we don't gloss over it. How did Serra do it? So you said you didn't know. How did that process go? Like, what does that mean if you're surprised as well?
So Matt pretty much texted me the day of. He was like, Nick, I just want you at training tonight. We really want to celebrate your win. We want everyone there for you. So I was just thinking, they were it's going to, a bit of a celebration. He was going to yell my name. Everyone was going to clap. So we got everyone, John Calstein, Frank, all the guys from Long Island. So I thought they were just celebrating my win. And then, Matt lined everyone up, said a really nice thing about me, said I've been training with him. I was a bit of a natural, super nice to me, and then gave me my black belt. And I was pretty shocked. I mean, it's a big moment.
So you didn't expect any of this? You didn't see that coming?
Nah.
Okay. Because that's the thing is like, we're at a split of some gyms, like, it still weirds me out when some gyms are like, oh, come to my black belt ceremony. And I'm like, I don't think they're going to tell me, dude. I think at one point I'm going to wear them down and they're just going to be like, here, we're tired, dude. Like, bro, we're so tired of you. And maybe this will get you to leave a little bit. And I'm going to be like, okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Well, that's amazing, dude. What does it feel like now? Did you feel anything different? Did you guys have roles afterwards? Like, what happens there? Because here's the issue. I need to know the first time you train after black belt and what happens then.
Well, actually, pretty much right after. Well, I trained before I got my black belt. We had a big class, and then after the class is when I got my black belt. But I think we just did like 1 or 2 private sessions after, because the gym started closing down after that. And then once Serra officially closed down, I haven't trained since. So I haven't really got to break it in at all, and I haven't worn my gi once since I got my black belt.
Well, that's not uncommon, but I do like the idea that now you have 2 things going on. Number one, while this pandemic is going on, I think that you should be able to run with the idea of being like, hey guys, hate to break it to you, but I broke the fucking gym. I was the last big event that you guys had, so always remember that. And 2, I feel like underneath that text, it's going to take somebody to figure out, but when you all go back to normal and you do start training, somebody's going to figure out like, oh, now he's a black belt. I didn't give him that promotion role of trying to do that thing that you try to break somebody. So I'm a little weary of that because, I mean, you're in good shape, kid. I'm not worried about you in that realm. But I know the brand of assholes that are friends, so... We
act like friends until they go for that big promotion role. Oh, I know all about that. I'm ready. I'll be ready.
Are you also one of those guys? Do you also put it on people when they get the promotion role?
Yeah, you got to give it a little.
Okay.
You got to bring them back to reality.
Yeah. I always tell people when they get their big promotions, I find my time. So I'll let other people go, and then I'll kind of judge it. I'll be like, I don't know, man, you were kind of a dick this past month, so now I'm really gonna be mean to you. Or sometimes I'm just like, listen, dude, these 15 people have murdered you, and I don't think you can stand straight anymore. So I'm gonna just submit you 3 times, and then I'm gonna let you go. But I'm not gonna kill you, kid. You're
Show
fine.
some mercy.
Well, it depends, because somebody, when I was doing a Zoom the other day, a friend of mine in the jiu-jitsu community was like, Raph, you're like the nicest guy. And I was like, am I? I don't even believe that. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I think I'm nice enough. I don't know that I'm the nicest guy. I can think of plenty others. And they're like, no, man, like, you're just always nice to people and blah, blah. And I was like, I guess they must not know me. Okay, well, good enough. I'll run with that. Well, let's rewind back a little bit right now. Let's take it back to, I was stoked. We're going to do your origin story again because I think it's important people know, and I think there's some cool things that we can bring up about that. But let's go all the way back to when you qualified for the Polaris Pro. Where was it? Do you remember vaguely what year it was? Because it feels like it's been 10 years since the pandemic started.
Oh yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, so what was it? 6 weeks ago, probably around. I took the trip to Bristol, United Kingdom, in the hopes of qualifying for this Polaris Grand Prix. I mean, the names in the Polaris Grand Prix are pretty insane. So to get an opportunity to qualify, I went all for it. You want me to go through the whole tournament, or?
Yeah, I think we need to go bit by bit because I don't know if you know this, but when the pandemic hit, jiu-jitsu nerds started consuming literally anything. Like, they literally, like, I don't know if you watch the landscape of what people are watching in jiu-jitsu, but half the time they're like, you guys want to watch my old highlights? That's fun. This is a cool match that we can, talk about. Jiu-jitsu was fun when we did deep. It. Yeah, and so for me, when you're like, oh, should I go back? I don't know if people even will want to talk about jiu-jitsu from 6 months ago. I'm like, nah, bro. At this point, everybody was like, tell me more about it. And then what happened there?
Sweet. So I get there. It's an absolute tournament. It's a 32-man absolute tournament. There's no seeds. Everything's completely random. And I'm looking around at everyone. Everyone's like 215. I see guys 250, 260. I'm 170. And I went with my friend who was also 170. We're looking at each other like, man, I don't know what we got ourselves into. But we start the tournament. I go with the guy around maybe like 185. I counter leg lock him pretty quickly. So it was a good start. Because sometimes I'm a bit of a slow starter. Mm-hmm. So to get a win, especially a submission win pretty quickly, is always a good sign. My next guy, it just gets heavier from here. So my next guy was about 220. And he was strong as an ox. I sweep him, enter into a leg locks, and finish him in about a minute and a half. So the tournament's going pretty well. And now I'm in the semis. I'm supposed to have 5 matches, but I had 4 matches because someone dropped out at the last minute. So I'm in my semis. This guy's about 250 pounds and super high level. At one point, the guy got me a hold of an ankle lock, barely even applied pressure, and I heard snapping and cracking. I was like, this guy is just crazy strong. So I was careful. I kind of stayed on the outside a little bit until I found a good time to strike, and I was able to take his back. I didn't submit him, but the back take was enough to win on points. That takes me into my finals match, where this kid is actually probably like 180, 185, but he was submitting everyone. He's one of the best guys from Europe. And it was a pretty big deal to get to face him. We had a back and forth match. It was tied up with about 2 minutes to go. I take his back, and I finish him with the rear naked strangle, and that's the tournament. But it was an amazing tournament and an amazing finals match.
Okay, now I gotta get to that point where I ask you the thing where I don't feel great about asking it, but I think Polaris was holding out hope they were going to make this happen. And I don't know how far or how not far you figured it could go. Travel bans were discussed. Flights in and out were still happening, though. At what point did you realize yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so I realized it's not going to happen when they started closing the borders. They started limiting flying. That's when I knew it was going to be a problem.
But were you holding out hope at that
They,
point?
they were even holding out hope. Like,
Yeah.
they were still trying to schedule plane tickets. Like, they were trying to schedule everything until the last second. And I don't blame them. It was going to be an amazing show.
Yeah.
It's still going to be an amazing show. But, eventually they had to fold their cards because it just wasn't going to happen. You couldn't even get out of the country.
I mean, I thought the worst thing I could have seen, and I understood the toughness of their position, but I thought one thing that I kind of said, oh, that's a bummer, because I know some of the guys who were going to travel overseas, I know Orchard, I know you. At some point, I believe Nicky Rod was on that card as well. And, there's a whole bunch of people that I'm thinking, these are big cards. They do big exposure for my friends, which means great things for their professional careers. They could entirely surprise. Who knows? Somebody could upset the tournament. Who knows what kind of narrative comes from it? Who knows? Maybe Nicky Rod is just then bursts out and is just I do steroids. Oops, did I say something crazy could have been fun and happened, and it would have been amazing. And yet, when they said they were going to keep it to an all UK card, I said, well, that's a bummer. But at least they're trying. I don't know that it would be my choice, but it's not my business. So my only hope is that they're going to make it safe. And at that point, I knew you're out, Orchard's out, Nicky Rod's out, and that's just a huge bummer. So, is it also hard to keep that in mind when the gyms close and everything's closing down, and then are you starting to worry all right, I can go compete, but I'm not going to be as fresh as I was going to be without the training?
I was definitely freaking out a little bit because they seem pretty set on doing the card no matter what. Mm-hmm. And I was running out of training options. I'm like, oh my god, this could be a disaster. I mean, the training was really dwindling. I mean, there just wasn't any opportunities.
Yeah.
I was kind of just hoping that they could cancel it at some point.
I mean, from a civilian and hobbyist standpoint, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, oh, well, at least everybody's mostly going to be fat when we all come back. So, to me, I'm just thinking, that's not an issue. These athletes, and people are still training. So, there are going to be a couple guys who would be coming into this competition being oh, I haven't missed any days. I didn't care. I just did my thing. And obviously things became more strict, and I think for the better part of their business, they decided not to do it all together, which means they weren't going to just waste an event that would have featured you guys. So that opportunity will still be there, and that what was communicated to you by the Polaris people in terms of, I know they don't have a date, but what did they say?
They just said when everything gets back to normal, we'll reach out to you right away.
Awesome.
And I said, perfect. But I will say one thing. I was kind of excited to be able to compete and have a big event during all this madness, because it's one of the only things people can watch. So I knew there would be a lot of eyes on, and that would be a huge plus.
I mean, it didn't happen. We should be plugging you into Submission Underground at this point. I don't.
Right?
But I mean, I think of it like this. I have to be very pro-con about a lot of this, because I feel like there's some that it can exist, and as a fan, I would be happy for you guys, and as somebody who would watch it and consume it. But I think the hardest thing that we learned from Dana White's example was, hey, bud, if you don't tell people how you're going to keep them safe, people are going to have questions. And it's not like we don't want the content. It's just we want these people to be safe. Even if they themselves are telling you, hey, bro, we don't care. Which would be different if they weren't asymptomatic carriers in some situations. So when you see later reports that Lyman Good had the virus and he would have been on that 249 card, you go, that would have been, our sport would have had a lot to recover from. So I understood it. I knew it would be cool, a great exposure time. It's just also that moment where you go, well, what message are we sending, and what does it mean? And if they can't tell you how they're keeping you safe and travel and all that sort of thing, it just kind of bums all of us out. Here's the good news. I believe, and the UFC's trying to make those amends because in February, in Florida, they're going to have 3 events back to back apparently. Yep. So as a result of that, I think people are going to be so hungry for content. I won't be surprised if you see 90 shows being made immediately after this, and people being like, do you want a super fight next Tuesday? Don't even care, just come on in. So I think people are going to be hungry to see you compete.
Yeah, for sure. The UFC that's amazing what they're doing. They said 3 events in a week. I mean, they're going on overdrive. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's again, we're still uncertain as to what it is they're completely doing. But yeah. I think I read in one report that Dana was saying they had to submit a 32-page proposal to the Nevada State Commission that I think at the very least says, all right, well, cool. Now you're kind of telling us you are making plans and you are doing that, which is a much better press relations version of saying how you're going to make a plan other than shut up, dummy, which is not really good. Let's get back to you, though. All right, so Polaris out the window, but it will happen in the future. Yep. Stoked for that for you because I really think that's a great opportunity for you, especially now that they did give you your black belt. You get that moment of like, well, now I got something else to prove. Now I got something else to go there.
That's a crazy debut as a black belt, isn't it?
For real, dude.
Against possibly Kanan first round. I mean, that's a crazy debut.
Yeah, and I mean, when we talked the last time, it was such a simpler time because you and I were talking theoretical matchups of the guys, and you're like, oh, this guy would be dope, and this guy would be dope. And, like, it's still cool. It's just harder to envision without a for set date,
It's far away, yeah.
But, it's going to happen, which means that's going to be cool, man. So, hey, here's the good news. That means hopefully they're not training as much either, too. So, can't prove that they aren't. But warm-ups in your living room will only get you so far. So we'll do that. Let's go to this, man. Okay, so we're going to start all the way back at the beginning because we did tell a few yarns about how you came to be in jiu-jitsu. So how does your jiu-jitsu journey begin, sir?
Yeah, so started in the 7th grade. I had a friend, Peter, and we were both huge fans of the UFC. And one of our favorite fighters was Matt Serra. We saw him win the title a couple years before, and he was our favorite fighter for sure. My friend was telling me that Matt Serra opened a gym about 10-15 minutes from where I live. So we both carpooled. We visited the gym. We got to meet Matt Serra, and ever since then I was absolutely hooked to learn from the UFC champ at the time. There was nothing better. And so it was a great experience from the beginning and continue to be.
Why Matt Serra? I mean, there's a lot of people you could go to, but what drew you to him?
I mean, he was using some pretty unorthodox moves in early UFC days. He was using single leg X, he was using X guard, he was using omoplatas, and I was just a jiu-jitsu junkie. I would YouTube everything, so I was like, this is the guy. I mean, I gotta learn from him. Doing it at the highest level. Also, of course, his 80cc run was just amazing. So not just an amazing fighter, but an amazing grappler. So
we're talking jiu-jitsu. I'm curious because I mean I know the answers to these, but how does wrestling play a role in your jiu-jitsu journey? Because that happened first, right?
So yeah, wrestling happened first. I always had a wrestling base. I started wrestling in the 2nd grade, which is funny because no one ever think I'm a wrestler because I just sit down in all my matches. But wrestling is a huge base. I mean, you can pretty much dictate where the match takes place if you're a better wrestler than the other guy. Also makes it extremely difficult to sweep because you have good balance. As a wrestler, your front headlock is just embedded in you. And just mental toughness and grittiness is just there because that's what you learn wrestling 5-6 times in a day, which is what happens in tournaments. So yeah, wrestling is a huge advantage when it comes to jiu-jitsu.
So you're saying you started that in 2nd grade, right?
Yeah.
Now, how does one start their first day in wrestling? Like, who brings you? Was it your decision? Was it, you had family members who did it? Was it even up to you?
I think it was just something I wanted to try. The local school was having a youth wrestling practice, and it was super fun. I just remember trying to double leg every single guy I rolled with that day, and I haven't stopped double legging since.
Were you one of those kids, because having brothers can do that too? Were you with a lot of energy? Were you guys the rough and tumble family kind of a thing? Because I get the feeling, it's a possibility.
One older brother, one younger brother. There were some brawls. Pretty much brawls almost every night. I mean, that's what we did. That's what brothers do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like mean fighting. It was just we're playing around. We're wrestling. We're
Right.
boxing. Anytime the parents aren't looking, we're throwing the gloves on. That was my childhood.
Did they keep with it? Because that's an interesting thing to me, is that it's always interesting to see how the progression goes. I bet you could ask any one of the people that I grew up with, and they're like, how are you doing jiu-jitsu? I was never doing those contact sports as a kid. But, if you watched me during soccer practices, and if somebody tried to kind of wrestle or grapple with me, I wasn't good per se, but I was so durable. People were like, what's wrong with him? He's really, I can't beat him up. And I was just like, yeah, I got tons of energy, and I'm just, resourceful, I guess.
You're a fighter. You got that quality.
Well,
that's what makes a good grappler.
I learned quickly, and it's so funny, when you kind of look back to the source origins of your own powers and whatnot, like a hero story. What my best friend, because I always had a philosophy of, I'm never going to pick on people who are smaller than me. I just never did. I was like, hey man, no, don't pick on this guy, don't do this. So instead, when I ever, was kind of messing with somebody, it was always somebody bigger than me. I would under no circumstances say yeah, this guy's smaller than me, I'm going to pick on him.
You get respect.
Well, I try to, man, but I was those were tough rounds.
I'm sure they were.
So my best friend, I always likened to being the Ivan Drago to my Rocky, where I could literally do whatever I wanted to him, and I could not hurt him. And yet this dude had about 60 pounds on me and could just lift me up, and I was like, oh shit, dude, this is not good. I know how to distribute my base, I know how to keep myself off anything. He's just strong. But now it's funny because he's still bigger, and he's still in good shape. But one day I got to bring him to jiu-jitsu, and he was kind of nervous. He was like, dude, I feel like you're just going to beat me up. And I was like, I'm so past that, dude. That it doesn't matter. I just want you to learn why what I do is cool. And, things change, man. What we were doing was fun because we were just bored. But now it's kind of there's systems, and I can teach you things, and I think it's really cool to teach you that sort of stuff. So did your brothers, did they stick with it? Or what do they feel about you as the competitor guy who goes out and does that?
Yeah, so they both did a little wrestling. My older brother did a little jiu-jitsu. My younger brother didn't. I mean, they liked that I do jiu-jitsu, but secretly I think they still think they could beat me up. I'm pretty sure about that. Even if it makes no sense at all, I'm pretty sure they think they could beat me up. Because what happened in the past, they think they could repeat it right now, but it's not
right.
true.
They're gonna have some sort of weird Raja al Ghul fear system that they can pull off on you, and just be like, nah, he's still susceptible to this. He may think that he's learned all this shit, but he doesn't know. Well, let me ask, what was the weirdest part about making the transition from wrestling to jiu-jitsu? Because a lot of people talk about it, and I'm always curious to find what is similar and what is different from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference was being comfortable on your back, for sure. Because the second you get taken down in wrestling, you're bellying down. Mm-hmm. If that happens in a jiu-jitsu match, you're getting strangled. So, kind of know, in a wrestling match, I got to belly down. In a jiu-jitsu match, I got to stay on my back. And honestly, that gets confusing, especially when you keep mixing between the two sports. That was definitely the hardest part. I mean, there's some times in wrestling practice where I'd be trying to butterfly sweep people, and they're like, "What are you doing? You're getting pinned. This is ridiculous." I don't know, trying something.
Hey, man, I cannot tell you how much during all of our wrestling classes, though, I just my brain would switch on and off. Like
Yeah.
when I have to take away, because I try to do the wrestling classes as pure as possible. It has nothing in my background for it, but I think it's a valuable resource to at the very least learn and try. I will tell you, when I have to give up all my front headlock power of my guillotines and all my little tricks for my wrestlers, I'm like, oh shit, dude, I look terrible. Like, this is between being slow and being unaware of what to do. You know, you do find yourself doing that. I saw at one point I was like grabbing a Kimura lock and I was like, is this gonna help me? Because please go away. Like,
DQ, automatic DQ.
yeah, exactly. But I'm like, oh right, you know, let's just try and give these guys good rounds and not be an idiot. When did you know that you loved jiu-jitsu though? Like, at what point does that happen for you?
Yeah, no, I knew I loved jiu-jitsu pretty much the first day I ever did jiu-jitsu. It was in the 7th grade. But I wanted to do wrestling. I mean, I went to St. Anthony's, which was the #1 sports program in the state. And they had an amazing wrestling program, one of the biggest wrestling rooms in the country. So, I mean, it was a crazy opportunity to not do wrestling. But even during the time that I was a wrestler, I always did jiu-jitsu. I didn't do it at Matt Serra's, but I would just mess around with it in practice, and I always thought about it and stuff like that. So, just pretty much from day one, I always liked jiu-jitsu.
Nice. Sorry, I also see here on your Instagram corroboration of an old journal note or an old letter that you wrote for a school project. And I would like for you to maybe describe it, because I'll tell you my interp in a second.
You want me to read it?
No, I mean, you don't. You know what? You read it if you want. I think that's actually better, because I want to preface this as you pull it up right now. I'm glad I asked you about your brothers. That was a hunch.
All right, so this is a long time ago.
Okay.
This is probably like 6th grade.
Okay.
Something like that, where there's just brawls every day.
Okay.
Right. So, it was like a school project where we have to talk about something about each of my family members.
Okay.
Okay, so this is about my older brother Matthew. My older brother Matthew's funny and crazy, loves to have a good time. We love to wrestle and box. We basically kill each other until we bleed. We box, dodge, hook, uppercut, knockout. The bad thing is I just got knocked out.
Okay, hold on. Let's stop here, because that was the moment when I was like, oh, research. What the fuck is that? What the fuck do you mean you got knocked out? So you mean your brother basically gives you a mini concussion at the age, and you're just like, well, I got to tell the teacher about this.
We're just playing. We're just having a good time.
Continue on, though. Go on.
Yes. I just got knocked out. My brother is victorious, and now I'm spitting up blood on the floor. It really takes a turn there. I lose, he wins. He gets the belt, and I am ashamed. This stinks, but I will verse him tomorrow, where we will box, and I will try to choke him out or break his arm. I love choking him out. I always have a blast doing it. Brotherly love.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's look at this as older people now. What's your first thought in reading that and going back to revisit that? Because you posted it, so you revisited it earlier, but you probably didn't post it with some host sitting there going like, let's talk about the psychological ramifications of this one kid.
We're both growing up pretty decent, but it was like in an old journal that I kept for some reason. I looked through it and I was like, oh my god, this is hilarious. I probably knew it was hilarious when I wrote it, so I kept it. But I mean, it's just child rivalry, having a good time. I mean, I feel like you grow and bond when you fight.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like that made our relationship stronger when, through fighting a little bit.
Well, I wanna go ahead and recap a couple things that I learned here as I was reading it along, which is, number one, I love this: dodge, hook, uppercut, and knockout. The bad thing. So for me, at a young age, you're already starting to decipher the process in which the fight happened. Like, you're reviewing tape in your head as you're writing this. So that's pretty impressive. Number two, I'm so glad you could decipher that first sentence, because I read it different. I read it as funny and lazy. And when I read it as Funny and Lazy, I was like, oh shit, dude. Like, that's hilarious. 3, if you really talk about it, because you're talking about what you pull out of this that you are able to discern later in life. I like the fact that you're admitting, like, I didn't like losing and I'm really pissed about it, but tomorrow's another day and I'm going to be able to do the same thing tomorrow. So, I mean, what better lesson is there to take from this other than saying, like, hey, kids, this is how you create that mentality of, like, how'd you win? How did you do that?
That day wasn't my day, but, you know, maybe I got him back
oh my
tomorrow.
God, I just realized you wrote that it wasn't my day post before it wasn't my day post. Like, if you're so lucky that we didn't have Instagram back then, because you would have been you being like, after just wrestling with your brother, being like, sorry guys, today wasn't my day. Things didn't go the way I thought it would. Hook, left punch should have happened.
Yep.
This is far enjoyable for me because it's ridiculous to see you wrote that. Okay. So you go through that. You're doing the thing with Matt Serra, and now you're starting to go to that point where you're about to graduate from high school. At this point, does wrestling start to take a little bit of a back seat to jiu-jitsu? Like, how does that then become something you balance?
Yeah, so I didn't really have that much interest in wrestling in college, but I did have interest in doing jiu-jitsu. So when I actually looked at schools, I actually made sure that they had a jiu-jitsu club for the school that I was looking at. And when I got into New Paltz, that's the first day of class, I joined the jiu-jitsu club. And then shortly after, I became the president.
How did you become the president? Was there a fight for it, or is it a vote? Because I think...
No, it was more like, just take it. Just please take it. He's like, that's not enough.
Because I always love hearing when people, like, establish or are at the forefront of a club, which is kind of that, like, not official group kind of basis with the university. And so then it's becoming like, man, if you leave it to Lord of the Flies style, then kids are going to be like, we Thunderdome to figure out who's president. And in your case, it's just being like, okay, thanks, guy. I guess I'm that guy now. All right, well, meetings on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
So where were you going to school when you were in college?
New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz, upstate.
Okay.
Upstate New York.
Okay, so I need to figure this out again because I still enjoy trying to discern this as well. But your nickname is the Accountant. How did you get that nickname, and did it have anything to do with what you were doing outside of the gym?
Okay, so my nickname was the Accountant originally because I had an accounting major. Also, because the movie came out around the same time that the nickname came out, obviously before, and the movie was pretty badass. So I was like, look, if that's what people are going to call me, that's what people are going to call me. And then I kind of just started bringing it out there. I was like, Gordon, let people know, like, who I am, just to get some hype around it or whatever. And then I got a legit accounting job. But I actually had the accountant nickname before I got any type of accounting job.
What a weird thing. I'm so glad that you were able to choose a nickname that at least was serendipitous in the right way. If you had been like Nick the Janitor Ronan, you would have been like, hey guys, no disrespect to them, it's just not really what I'm trying to do. Would be nice to do something else. That's interesting. Did you feel the extra pressure once they're like, well, I guess I'm the accountant now. That's what I should do in real life.
Yeah. No, not really. I will say things got a little weird with the nickname when people started being like, let's see if we can audit Nick Ronan, and like jokingly, like we could beat him using like tax terms and stuff. And I was like, I don't know, this is getting a little weird.
I will say, as a pro wrestling fan my whole life, I understand the element of trash talk very well. As a comic, I will also say most trash talk bores me because it's usually so bad. So between those two things, anytime most people start trash talking each other, I go, how long is it going to take till we get to the puns? These kids going to do this for a while. It's going to be real bad. going to be real annoying. All right, kids, shut up. So I'm not surprised that's the case. Did you end up changing your nickname? Do you have a new nickname, or are you just like, nah, man, I'm going back to my roots. I'm Nick Ronan now, man.
Yeah, I mean, people can call me the accountant. It's still cool. I think I still, yeah, I took it off Instagram, but yeah, I think it's stuck a little bit.
I mean, here's the good news, dude. I remembered hearing your nickname and being like, it didn't take me long. I go, is he an accountant? And they were like, yeah, he's going to school. He's gonna, do that, and looks like he's probably gonna be an accountant. I was like, all right, that's all I need to know. Cool. Like, that was the extent of it. I would be like, I just thought of it from the perspective of, yeah, these guys aren't smart enough to come up with anything else. Most of the time, they were like, Frankie, 2 toes. Why do you call him 2 toes? Well, I mean, look at it. We got 2 toes. So, how is it? You told this great story when we were recording this about Matt Serra losing his shit and coaching you as an experience. You were just saying that there was something about him yelling and watching him yell consistently that brought it out of you. Can you describe what that is? Because I absolutely love that story.
Yeah, when Matt speaks, first off, the entire auditorium can hear Matt speak. He's got the loudest, most projecting voice I've ever heard. And when you're wrestling and when you're grappling, you need a loud voice like that. It really lights a fire underneath you when you hear someone kind of screaming at you like that. And it's very direct, very good points. And every time he speaks, it just like jolts me up, and I'm listening. And I just love having him in my corner.
Well, that's good. I would say, especially growing up, I'm sure as a UFC fan and seeing that, because to me, I was watching these things from my couch when I was in college. I never expected we'd be in the same places or I'd know the same people. Like, these were just people on TV who were coaches in a sport that I was like, I'll never meet them. I don't know these people. And the more and more I do these things, I run into them and I see them. And I remember being at the UFC, covering one of my first UFCs, and just being like, hey, Raf, can we grab Matt Serra? And I was like, I don't know where he is. And then you just hear, hey! And I'll go, oh, I found him.
There he is.
You know what? He's the easiest one to find. The whole crew's just right there. We just got to go ask them. So that's going to be pretty good. I know I'm probably asking you to recall things that are difficult given how long it's been since we've all been training. But what have been some of your favorite memories about training over in the Blue Basement? Have you had any super memorable moments? Because when you make that transition into going into that room, it's an interesting transition to be like, hey, now we're bringing you in, dude. We like you. We bring you to the Blue Basement. We think that you have value to the team. What does that feel like?
It's nice. It's nice to be recognized. Because, I put a lot of time in before they really... Well, I probably put about like 6 months of just hard work, just being completely quiet until people started kind of coming up to me, kind of recognizing that I'm working hard, I'm listening, I'm there every day, kind of thing. And then eventually they kind of brought me into the circle. And then personally, I would take privates with John. And I really got close. And then me and Jason Rao would go into the city every week and take privates with him. And that's how we really got invited into the small circle.
What, and a lot of people don't experience this, what does it feel like for a private with Danaher? Because now, again, it's a little different. You do the classes, you're accepted in the mold. But when you first start there, it feels like, how did we find Yoda? Like, this is weird. This is a guy who we want to learn from.
Like, are we talking about the same sport here? Like, what's going on? Like,
right.
After every private, I'm just looking at Jason. He's looking at me like, dude, this is crazy. Like, this is another level. I mean, every week it was just unbelievable. Like, the knowledge we attained from him. I mean, crazy. So blessed to be able to live in the same era as someone like that. Crazy.
Well, we have somebody who's a huge fan of you. One, Frank Rosenthal says, big Nick Ronan fan. Don't know why.
Big Frank Rosenthal fan.
Gross. Get a room, too. Yeah, I mean, here's the nice part is I like watching on y'all's Instagrams now that we're in a pandemic because it's a varied amount of loss of sanity to see. And most people are going crazy. Interesting thing about Frank Rosenthal's Instagram, exact same. Like, he is insane as he was before the pandemic. It's almost maybe even made him seem a little more sane since. We have Jay Scott, who very nicely contributes as well. Nick Ronan is an amazing guy. Now, guys, these are very nice things, okay? I didn't hire a Candygram service. If you got questions for Nick, I'm happy to maybe ask some of those. Though I'm afraid of the type of questions I'll get, I'll at least screen them. But yes, thank you very much, Jay. We appreciate that. The look on your face of being like, don't open it up, dude. Don't let them ask questions. So what have you been doing in the pandemic? Like, what is... You were mentioning a little bit of home training. What is home training?
I mean, I have the Maximus dummy. Friend from New Zealand makes them, ship one out to me. So I get some training with that. Obviously, there's no resistance, but it's super helpful for passing, for leg locks. I can kind of keep my mind sharp with that. Running, staying in shape, lifting. As much as I can do without actually training. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I can't go to a gym, so.
I gotta laugh at this because when I said the last time, like, hey, do you want to give these shouts out? You actually did a shout out to your grappling dummy. And that was before any of this happened. And you were like, yeah, it's my grappling dummy. And I know a lot of people don't always use it. And little did we all know, that's all we got now.
That's it.
It's that or a chair, dude. And the grappling dummy is, all things considered, a little bit easier on the joints. So yeah. I think that's what you want to do. I think you were just ahead of the curve.
I really was. I was predicting the future.
I've just been so interested to see, for me, I hate doing any kind of training other than jiu-jitsu. Like, I was doing some boxing privates before this, and that was helping me because I like getting that cardio in. But, same thing with jiu-jitsu where I'm like, I'm not a fighter. I'm not trying to fight for a fight. I'm trying to fight my dinner. Like, really, that's what I'm doing here. So when people are like, dude, do these warm-ups at home, I'm like, I don't want to. Like, let me bang, bro. Let me bang, whatever version of it is. Just let me do it.
Any other workout just seems kind of boring,
I mean, I'm happy these guys are doing privates and still doing, videos to try and keep our brains occupied. But, for the most part, as hard as I'm trying here, I've just kind of given into this idea of being like, oh yeah, I'll go walk and I'll do this and yeah. But you know what? As soon as we can get back to doing this, I'm going to have my work cut out for me.
Oh yeah, we all are.
But I think that's one of the most important aspects of having these conversations is because everybody feels in a different space because of it. And I like reminding people, no, dude, you don't feel any different than I do right now. I want to get back to training the minute I can. And even though you and I train very differently, we both want it. We both want to go back to it right now. So that's been something that's been interesting to see. Well, before you had all these competitions that we were excited or in the works, I guess my question is to you, has this pandemic situation now put you in a mood where you go, I'm ready. When we can, line up the competitions for me, please.
A little bit. I'm itching. Yeah. I'm absolutely itching to get back out there. I mean, time away isn't a bad thing. Taking a week off if your body's sore, I'm all for it. But what is this? 5 weeks? So this is insanity. This is like having a surgery and taking time off. This is horrible.
One thing I've been trying to impress upon people is, especially for hobbyists, is I really want to make sure that people know that once we do go back, you're not going to be able to go as hard as you used to. You're going to have to pace yourself back in because of that rubber band effect. When you're in shape and you're doing it, that rubber band can be flexible and it can go. The last thing I want for any person doing this is to get injured again when we get the go ahead. So I've been doing my part to be like, yeah, guys, I know we all can't wait, but we're gonna have to dial it back up before we can all go crazy again. So everybody, just keep that in mind.
Keep into it for sure. If you go right to 100, I mean, there's definitely gonna be injuries like crazy.
Has it been interesting? Like, has your job, because I know you're able to work and do your stuff from home, so has your job been like, bro, we're seeing so much more of you now online. Like, you don't have that jiu-jitsu thing anymore. You're so, man, look at you.
I think the guys I work with don't really use the internet that much, to be honest.
Fair enough. Well, is your family at least happy to get to see you more now? Because I'll tell you this much. My wife definitely was always like, you always go to jiu-jitsu. You always go to jiu-jitsu. And now I'm like, well, what are we doing tomorrow night? Because what movie are we watching?
Exactly. There's a lot of togetherness right now. No, I'm sure they're happy. They're happy I'm around, because I was training 2 or 3 times a day, going all out. So
and that's a drive. That's something that you got to put that time into and all that sort of a thing. So that time you get back, it must be nice. Have you done anything surprising for yourself? Have you done anything that you were like, I would normally not do this, but now that I have the time, I am doing this?
I don't think so. I've been working on my wiffle ball swing a lot.
What? So hold up. you busted out your, what is this? Your
Ball.
Okay. Everybody's doing a different thing, dude. I get it.
Gotta work on the swing.
Hey man, I gotta tell you, man, when I came into this interview, I didn't think like, well, when we get around to the what are you doing questions, I'm gonna be like, for sure Nick Ronan he's working on his shuttlecock swing. Good for him. He's crushing that game right now.
Easy guess.
Easy guess. Well, Nick, here's the thing, man. I'm so happy we got to redo this. I was so happy to put some shine on you because I've seen you hustling, and for me, it's always about making sure you keep tabs on those guys who are like bubbling under or who are making waves, because not only are they the future, but they're the guys who sometimes don't get that appreciation for the work that they do. And I've seen it. I've liked so many of your matches. When I heard that you won Polaris Pro, I said, all right, we got to do the thing now. And there was nothing more heartbreaking when that video footage just died. And I was like, fuck. There's nothing you did wrong. It was a great interview. I was stoked to be able to do it. So to me, it was so important to find the right time when we would have an uninterrupted stream where we could tell your story, where we could go through and talk about what it is that made you you and why we're so stoked to see you on what looks like the very beginnings of what could be a very cool thing competition-wise once we're all back up and running.
I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.
Giving me a chance.
Well, can I give you some time to shout out any sponsors, any people you want to go ahead and say thank you to? Or, I mean, here's the thing. If they surprise you with your black belt and it's a lot of emotions, sometimes you don't always get to say the things you wanted to say even there too. So I want to give you the opportunity. You have open floor. People you want to shout out, promos, all that good stuff.
To all my teammates at Serra BJJ, I just can't wait to be training with all of you again when this whole thing's over. To my clothing sponsor, the Atlas brand, they've always been good to me, as well as the Maximus dummy, which I've been getting a lot of use out of lately.
So funny. You know what? I think that might be the only part that survived. I'm gonna have to figure out. There's like literally of the interview that we did, which is probably like this, about 40 minutes an hour. I only had 5 minutes of uninterrupted anything. So if I have that clip somewhere, I'm gonna pull that out just so we can do a side by side of you being like, guys, I swear this grappling dummy. I know a lot of people don't use it. Just so that people know that you were not only ahead of the game, but that, hey man, when the accountant speaks, maybe you should take it to heart.
Listen up.
Well, Nick, hey man, I'm glad to see you're healthy. I'm glad, obviously everything's going okay. Your family's good. Everything's good. That, all things considered, you're keeping pretty sane. And from our perspective, this is probably going to be a drop in the bucket of when you get back to competing again. You're going to come back, I think, twice as aggressive. And I hope that we're stoked to see what happens for you as a black belt.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right, guys, let's do this. If you don't follow us, you dummies, follow us. What else do you have going on? You should be able to go check out classic episodes of Grappling Hour on all of our pages, but we're specifically going to YouTube right now because we're going for 200. Well, we're going for 2,500 subscribers, but I honestly don't know what this year is going to do to any of us. But in the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to us, give us some love. You can also give a love to Verbal Tapcast, which we continue to produce episodes. We just celebrate our 400th episode. And my other venture, my late night talk show, Early Late Night. Follow all those things in case you're hungry for content, you're bored with what Netflix has. Raf's got you covered. I will be entertaining you and talking with lots of friends. Our thanks to Nick Ronan, a young man who has had to endure so many false starts on this dumb interview. And I apologize profusely, but I'm so glad we were able to make it happen. Ladies and gents, it's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you on the mats. Eventually.